The story of America is one of grand ideals and harsh realities. Unity sought and division endured. At the heart of this story stand figures like Thomas Jefferson, architect of liberty yet slave owner, champion of the common man yet aristocrat. Welcome to our deep dive into the ideological, political, and personal clashes between Thomas Jefferson and his fellow founding fathers. These conflicts were pivotal in shaping the early American Republic, more than mere disagreements. They were clashes of vision and principle. The ink was barely dry on the Constitution, and already the seeds of discord were being sown. The framers of the Constitution had created a document that was both a blueprint for governance and a battleground for competing visions of America's future. Jefferson, ever the agrarian idealist, envisioned a nation of farmers, independent and beholden to no central authority. He believed that the strength of the United States lay in its rural roots and the self-sufficiency of its citizens. He looked with suspicion on the burgeoning Federalist vision, seeing in its embrace of centralized power the specter of tyranny. To Jefferson, a strong federal government was a threat to individual liberties and state sovereignty. On the other side stood Alexander Hamilton, the ambitious architect of American finance. Hamilton's vision was one of a robust, industrialized nation, driven by commerce and a strong central government. Hamilton saw in a strong, centralized government the key to national greatness. He believed that only a powerful federal government could provide the stability and infrastructure needed for economic growth and international respect. He championed a national bank, a standing army, and a robust system of federal taxation. These institutions, he argued, were essential for the young nation to thrive and compete on the world stage. The debate over the national bank in the early 1790s brought this tension to a boil. It was a defining moment that highlighted the deep ideological divide between the Federalists and the Republicans. Hamilton argued for its necessity, claiming it would provide stability and credit to the fledgling nation. He saw the bank as a cornerstone of his financial system, crucial for managing debt and fostering economic development. Jefferson countered, claiming it overstepped the bounds of the Constitution, granting too much power to the federal government. He feared that such centralization would erode the rights of states and individuals. It was a battle fought in newspapers, Congress, and drawing rooms. The public was deeply engaged, with pamphlets and editorials flying back and forth, each side rallying support for their vision of America's future. Jefferson penned fiery denunciations of what he saw as Federalist overreach. His writings were passionate and persuasive, capturing the fears of many who worried about the concentration of power. In the end, Hamilton's vision, bolstered by Washington's support, prevailed. The establishment of the national bank marked a significant victory for the Federalists and set a precedent for federal authority. The national bank was established, a symbolic victory for the Federalists. It represented not just a financial institution, but a triumph of Hamilton's broader vision for a strong, centralized government. The debate over the balance of power between the federal government and the states would continue to shape the destiny of a nation. This foundational conflict set the stage for future political battles and remains a central theme in American political discourse. As the 18th century drew to a close, the fires of revolution were sweeping across Europe. The French monarchy was crumbling, replaced by a republic founded on the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity. Jefferson, ever the Francophile, saw in the French Revolution an echo of their own struggle for independence. He championed the cause of the French Republic, urging American support for their revolutionary brethren. But others, like John Adams and Alexander Hamilton, viewed the unfolding chaos in France with growing alarm. They feared the excesses of the revolution and the threat it posed to American interests. When war erupted between France and Great Britain, these divisions came to a head. Washington issued the Proclamation of Neutrality in 1793, seeking to chart a neutral course. The proclamation infuriated Jefferson, who saw it as a betrayal of the French and a capitulation to British interests. The debate over foreign policy cut to the core of the new nation's identity, questions that would continue to vex American leaders for generations. The founders had feared the rise of factions, of political parties more concerned with power than principle. They envisioned a united republic where the common good would prevail over individual interests. By the mid-1790s, the ideological fissures erupted into open political warfare. The debates were no longer just philosophical, but had real, tangible impacts on the direction of the nation. Two distinct parties, each with its own vision for America, emerged. These parties were not just political entities, but represented different ways of life and governance. On one side stood the Federalists, led by Hamilton and Adams. They believed in a strong central government that could unify the states and drive economic growth. They were the party of commerce and industry, advocating for policies that would support merchants, bankers, and manufacturers. They also favored closer ties with Great Britain, seeing it as a model for economic and political stability. On the other side stood the Democratic Republicans, led by Jefferson and James Madison. They championed the rights of states and the common man. They were the party of the yeoman farmer, believing that the strength of the nation lay in its agrarian roots and the virtue of its independent farmers. They advocated for states' rights and limited government, fearing that a powerful central government would become tyrannical. The rivalry between these two parties poisoned the political atmosphere. The debates were often bitter and personal, reflecting the deep divisions within the young nation. Newspapers, often little more than mouthpieces for the two parties, traded vicious barbs. The media became a battleground where each side sought to undermine the other. The passage of the Alien and Sedition Acts in 1798, championed by the Federalists, poured fuel on the fire. These acts were seen as an overreach of federal power. The acts were seen by the Democratic Republicans as a blatant attempt to silence dissent and consolidate Federalist power. They argued that these laws violated the fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. Jefferson denounced the acts as an assault on the First Amendment. He believed that free speech and a free press were essential to the health of the Republic. The stage was set for the bitter and divisive election of 1800, a contest that would test the very fabric of the young Republic. This election was not just a political battle, but a struggle for the soul of the nation, a contest that would test the very fabric of the young Republic. The stakes were incredibly high, and the outcome would shape the future of American democracy. The rivalry between these two parties, fueled by ideology and ambition, shaped the early American political landscape. Their conflicts and compromises laid the groundwork for the political system we know today. The political battles that raged in the early republic were often deeply personal. These were men who had fought side by side for independence, yet were also men of strong convictions. Take, for example, the complex relationship between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They collaborated closely on the Declaration of Independence, yet their friendship was marked by periods of intense rivalry. Their political differences drove a wedge between them. Then there was the fraught relationship between Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Their rivalry was as much about personality as it was about policy. Hamilton viewed Jefferson with a mix of admiration and resentment. Jefferson saw in Hamilton's embrace of centralized power a betrayal of the Revolution's egalitarian ideals. Their disagreements were legendary, played out on the public stage with a ferocity that shocked even their contemporaries. Yet, even amidst the vitriol, there was a grudging respect. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of these relationships was their capacity for reconciliation, as seen in the rekindled friendship between Jefferson and Adams through heartfelt letters. No exploration of Thomas Jefferson's legacy would be complete without confronting the glaring contradiction at its heart: his ownership of enslaved people. Jefferson, a founding father and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, is often celebrated for his contributions to the birth of the United States. However, his personal life tells a different story, one that is marred by the institution of slavery. How could the man who penned the immortal words, "All men are created equal," reconcile such a belief with the institution of slavery? This question has puzzled historians and scholars for generations, leading to intense debates and discussions. Some argue that he was a man of his time, a product of a society that accepted slavery as a fact of life. They suggest that Jefferson's actions were influenced by the norms and economic realities of 18th century America, where slavery was deeply entrenched. Others contend that Jefferson's failure to use his position and influence to challenge the institution of slavery makes him complicit in its perpetuation. They argue that as a leader, he had a moral responsibility to oppose such an inhumane practice. Abigail Adams, the wife of John Adams, challenged Jefferson on his hypocrisy. She was one of the few who dared to confront him directly on this issue. In a letter penned in 1818, she wrote, "I have been excited to find that the author of the Declaration of Independence could reconcile his conscience to the holding and selling of slaves." Her words echoed the sentiments of many who saw the contradiction in Jefferson's actions. Jefferson's own writings offer a glimpse into his conflicted conscience. He often wrote about the moral dilemmas he faced, revealing a man who was deeply troubled by the institution he was a part of. In his notes on the state of Virginia, he expressed his belief that slavery was morally wrong. He acknowledged the inherent injustice and the potential for divine retribution. Yet despite his professed belief in the equality of all men, Jefferson never freed his enslaved people. This stark reality highlights the complexity and contradictions of his character. The stain of slavery casts a long shadow over Jefferson's legacy, a stark reminder of the prejudices of his time. It forces us to grapple with the uncomfortable truths about our history and the people who shaped it. The Founding Fathers were products of the Enlightenment, their minds shaped by the writings of Locke, Montesquieu, and Rousseau. They looked to the ancient republics of Greece and Rome for inspiration. Jefferson believed that a virtuous republic could only be sustained by a citizenry of independent farmers. He viewed cities as breeding grounds for corruption and vice. Hamilton, on the other hand, embraced the economic possibilities of the new nation. He believed that America's future lay in industrial might. He envisioned a nation with a diversified economy, a strong manufacturing base, and a robust financial system. These differing visions played out in their debates over economic policy. Hamilton championed a national bank, protective tariffs, and government subsidies for industry. Jefferson opposed such measures, arguing that they favored the wealthy at the expense of the common man. The debate over federal authority was also intertwined with these competing visions. These debates reflected the founders' deep engagement with the fundamental questions of governance. The story of Thomas Jefferson and his fellow founding fathers is not a simple tale of heroes and villains. Jefferson's clashes with his fellow founders were instrumental in shaping America's political landscape. These disputes, though divisive, forged a dynamic republic rooted in debate and compromise, a legacy that continues to define American democracy. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical insights.